Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Museum of Goa. This is a rare MOG Sunday that we are doing in the evening. Normally, we do it in the mornings. We have a very important speaker today, Vikram Chanda. He needs no introduction. Everybody of you have seen him on television. He is going to speak about how the television news in India is sliding down, is sinking. I think we virtually live in the times of sinking today. It's not just the television news which is sinking, but there are many other aspects of our living in politics, in religion, and many things are sinking. So it's the age of sinking, actually. Vikram Chanda is, I would consider him as a kind of a conscience of Indian journalism. He's a pillar of the conscience of Indian journalism. He has still maintained his whatever in the sinking times, he still managed to keep journalism afloat. Without much ado, let me invite Vikram Chanda to talk about the sliding of Indian television news.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those very kind words, Dr. Kedkar. It's such a pleasure and such a privilege to be here. I know I wanted to come and speak at the Museum of Goa in the past. We weren't able to get the dates to match, and I'm really actually pleasantly surprised that so many of you have come at a time when I thought, Ganesh Visarjan and many other things would be happening, which would be keeping everyone, really tied up. What I really want to talk about are two things. One is what is happening with television news, because that's a question a lot of people ask me about. And secondly, the reasons why I try to find an answer on finding the solution, finding the way forward. Because it's one thing to keep on complaining and saying something terrible is happening all around us, and it's another thing to try and say what will replace it. And in our present world, as things are going wrong, quite often technology is proving to be the solution. And that's what, to some extent, we're trying to do with Editorji. I'll try not making this a long, boring bhashan. I'll say a few words, and then I think probably best to leave it interactive. Very happy to take questions from all of you. But as to what is happening with television news, let me just try a little experiment which I have tried in virtually every gathering I have addressed for the last 8 years. And that's to put that question to you. How many of you think television news is becoming unwatchable? How many of you think that way? Okay, it's often easier in gatherings like this to say who does not think that, and very few hands go up. So that got me really thinking. If virtually everybody you ever ask says television news is sinking and is unwatchable, why does television news continue to go on that path? Because, quite frankly, I agree with that view. Many years ago, 30 years ago, when I was deciding to get into the field of journalism, if anybody had told me that this is what the industry you're joining is going to end up as, I wouldn't have done it. I'd have been too ashamed to do it. When I switch on the average television news channel today, I feel, well, a lot of what is said every evening on television news is the sort of stuff which would get you arrested for hate speech. Just 8 years or 10 years ago, it would literally be considered hate speech. But that's what happens, and that's what continues night after night. And you've got to ask your question, why is this happening? So before I come to where I think the future is and the rest of it, let's spend a little time trying to understand why. Because let's face it, a lot of really good journalists are there in television news and in the rest of mass media. And no one really goes and says, I'm going to become a broadcast journalism because I want to shout at people or get them to shout at each other. It's not really what you set yourself out to do. If it's happening, it's because there are structural problems with the way the media news business is working itself out. To some extent, this is a reflection of trends that you're going to see everywhere in the world. Linear television. I'm going to restrict myself largely to television news. It's an area that I know better than print. And I also don't think print is in as bad a shape as television news is. When you open your newspaper every morning, okay, you may disagree with certain things of it, but it doesn't come across as sounding I mean, it doesn't make you start feeling like tearing your hair out and saying, what's there? Television news can make you feel that way. So why television? There is a structural problem that is happening with linear television everywhere in the world. You are not going to be having the entire concept of having a particular television channel that is beaming into your homes from either an antenna or from a satellite is an anachronism. I mean, television news today is virtually the same as it used to be 70 years ago at the time of Walter Cronkite. The television news broadcasts are very similar to that. Why is it necessary in today's day and age when that's not the way you're watching any other type of video? If you're watching entertainment, if you're watching soaps, if you're watching movies, I dare say most of you are nowadays watching it on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something else, right? Where you're not dependent on appointment viewing. You're not really dependent on saying, oh, I have to remember to switch on my serial at this time. It's now all moving to OTT. This is a trend that is happening everywhere. Even when it comes to areas which people used to say, no, live television is necessary for this. It used to be things like sports. But frankly, even sports right now is almost entirely coming to you on on OTT. So whether you're watching it on Hotstar, whether you're watching it on Star, it's virtually the same experience. So therefore, when I have people telling me that, oh no, linear television is going to survive, I say, why? They say, oh, because linear television is where I'm watching television news. And I say, really? The hope for the entire linear television industry is television news, which is, as all of you have just said, virtually unwatchable. So clearly there is something wrong here. So reason one for why television news is going to continue to slide is because linear television itself is going to slide. But there's a second problem, and that's a problem especially in India, which I think it's very important for everyone to recognize because it's something which is often not factored in. And that's the business model. Now, if you're abroad, if you're in the US, you're in Britain, you're some other place, what typically tends to happen is, if you're a good broadcaster, people will pay subscription revenue for you. If you're CNN or even Fox News, whoever you are, you will get someone paying you subscription money. That subscription money comes to the television news broadcaster who uses it to pay their bills. Everyone's happy. Well, mostly everyone's happy. In India, television news channels do not get subscription money. You pay your cable operator, that money doesn't go to television news broadcasters. The cable operators keep virtually all of it. As a result, all the revenue for television news channels comes from advertising. And advertising comes from those wonderful three letters called TRP, right? So TRPs is where you get advertising. TRPs are driven by 50,000 boxes in a country of 1.4 billion people. 50,000 boxes is what determines what the TRPs are coming from. And by now, it is a scientifically proven fact that TRPs in India will come from tabloid content or sensational content or people fighting with each other. That's where you will get TRPs. If you do a intelligent sort of a program or something on FDI or problems of plastic waste or art or something like that, you'll get zero TRPs. But if you can get two people into the studio and you can get them to shout at each other, there will be TRPs. If the anchor, you get a tantric inside the studio and you get that tantric to shout at somebody, even more TRPs. If you get an anchor to shout at somebody, even more TRPs. I guess if the anchors are tantric, that's the best of it all, which may happen, who knows. But that's where the TRPs come from. And that's the reason why that. And by the way, for the television news channels, it's also cheaper. It's a much easier, cheaper thing to do, to get four people to come and shout at each other in a studio, rather than spending expensive time and money sending camera people all around the world trying to film stories. So the long and the short of it is that I wish I had good news to say television news is miraculously going to turn around and it's going to become wonderful and the source of information. I don't think it's going to happen. But the good news is that I don't think it has to happen, because as I said, that's in any case the technology of the past. So I quit television news in 2016. I left NDTV in 2016 and spent a reasonable amount of time trying to figure out what is going to replace it. there's a certain path which I'm happy to talk to you about right now, which is the path that I think the industry is going to move towards. It's a possible solution. But there are other solutions that will be out there, and hopefully a few years from now, everything will be great. The real question that struck me when I left television is, if the first is a given, television news is broken, sensationalism, and in linear television you have no choice. There's no personalization. You can't personalize your television news channel, right? There's no way of physically doing that. You have to watch whatever garbage, you have to watch whatever great content is being pushed out to you at that particular time. The real question for me was, why is digital video news not working? Because if you look at digital news, text news, a lot of people get it very effectively and very efficiently on various devices, on mobiles. You go to websites, you get apps, and you're able to get digital news. You're able to get news on digital formats without too much problem. You're able to get digital video on OTT without too much problem. There are examples I gave you: Amazon Prime, Netflix, everything. It works just fine. There's no problem. But put those three words together, digital video news, and it doesn't work. Nowhere is it really working. So I spent some time, I went and met the YouTube folks and others like that and said, what's the problem? And they said, well, we don't know, it just doesn't work. You know, we keep hoping that there'll be more news and other content on YouTube. It doesn't work. And then it came to us when we sat and did some thinking about it. The reason it doesn't work is because what you want to be informed, if you want news or information, you want 20, 30 pieces of information to feel, okay, I know what's happening in the world. Some headlines, some sports, some lifestyle, some technology news, some business news, some what's happening internationally. You want 20, 30 pieces of information. How do you get that on digital formats? The answer from YouTube and many of the other people was, oh, people will come and they will open YouTube and they will type the story they want and we'll show them the story. Now, to my mind, that was a profoundly unsatisfactory answer, because who's going to do it? Like, who is going to really sit? You may have heard of a story. You just heard me saying, unfortunately, Cyrus Mistry just passed away in a road accident. Now, story, you may Google it, you may search it, and that story may come up. But you're not going to do that 30 times in a day, not for video news. So video news, therefore, does not have an answer. Video news today is being delivered to all of you through social media. People send you WhatsApps, people send you Facebook videos, and that is what you think is informing you, but not really, because a lot of that is fake news, a lot of that is opinionated news. Even if it's not fake, most of the news that is coming to you is colored with somebody's opinion. It's a view, it's not the news. So it's not the answer. So the next, has to be a way of going forward. That way? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's what I was just talking about. Why linear television fundamentally isn't happening. Which then led us to another, I'm going to sort of go upwards a little bit from what I'm saying about the music industry. Where we at Editorji felt that the answer is going to come from is from the music industry. And I still believe the answer in video news and information will come from the music industry. And that's because, if you really think about it, it's not that dissimilar. Music is little clips, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, right? That's the way music is. Again, you have the same issues. How am I going to hear? I don't want to hear it for just 2-3 minutes. I want to keep hearing it for a while. In music, you used to traditionally have radio, right? And that's like television news. TV news is like radio. You switch on a channel, you can listen to it. If you don't like what you're listening to, it's not personalized. You're listening to something that someone is giving you. You don't like it, you have to switch the channel. So television news is like radio. Today, digital video news and information is like cassettes and CDs. You can find the song you want, you can find the news story that you want, but frankly, it's a pain to do it. It's a real effort. You got to go looking for it. Form factor is not there. Who's going to really be getting cassettes and CDs and fast forwarding it and finding the right thing? So neither of them works. Now in music, the problem's been solved, right? Because what you do is, everyone must be listening to Apple Music or Spotify or various things like that, where essentially two things are happening. You are getting, either you are listening to a curated playlist that some person has put together, 70s music, bhangra, rap, something like that. So it's somebody has put together a playlist of music that fits what you are feeling like listening to at that point. Or an AI algorithm is saying, you know, this is the sort of music you like, we're going to make you hear more like that. We're going to play music for you. Release radar. You know, that's where concepts like that come from. So that at a core is what we have put together. If you were to ever look at what we spent 2 to 3 years building, is a very simple system where if you get the Editorji app and you click on it, you open it, then there will be an AI playlist that will give you news, which it thinks, which is to keep you informed. 20, 30 stories selected for you. And those stories are selected partly stories that you should see, that we think are important for you to see to be informed, and some are based on preferences. Now, there's a very big debate about this, which I'm going to come back to, because just as bad as television news is, algorithms and AI running amok could be even worse. Even worse. So therefore, just pause that thought for a minute, and I'm going to come back to it, why that algorithm has to be very carefully treated. So we've got AI which is selecting news for you, and below that a curated playlist. In the mood for technology, fine, here. You want lifestyle, here. Art, here. You want international headlines, here, international headlines. You want sports headlines, here, sports headlines. So you use playlists to deliver video news to people. I think an important direction in which the entire industry is going to move. The other important direction which I think the entire industry is going to approve, and this is something which I really want to leave, you know, maybe get a debate started on this, is this entire question of a pipeline versus a platform. And just bear with me while I take you through this, because in my opinion, I could be completely wrong. I think in the next 4 to 5 years, in the media industry, you are going to see an overturning of something that has existed for 100 years, in fact, 150 years. And that is, all businesses traditionally have run as pipelines, and the media business is no different. By pipeline, I mean, you have a media company which says, I'm a big shot. I'm Times of India. I'm Aaj Tak. I'm NDTV. I'm Republic. I'm whoever I am. I'm the big shot. I'm a big media company, and I control my user. I have a pipeline to my user. To experience my content, the user has to come to me. Read my newspaper, watch my television news channel, download my app, come to my website, listen to my radio. You've got to come to me. I have a pipeline to my user. And the power of a media company is driven by how fat that pipeline is. Why is I fight for TRPs? If I have lots of TRPs, I have a pipe to my user. So you want to get my users, you got to come to me, give me ads. Why is it that I'm bothered about subscribers? It means I have a fat pipe to my users. So you got to come to me, right? Same is true with, you name it. Everything has been based on the pipeline that you have to the user. But if you look around you, that's not the way most other industries are behaving or functioning anymore. Let's take some examples. The hotel business. You used to have a pipeline. I have so many hotel rooms, right? That was the pipeline that you had to your consumer. I am the Taj Group. I have so many hotel rooms. I am Marriott. I have so many hotel rooms. How many hotel rooms does Airbnb own? The answer is 0. How many restaurants does Zomato own? 0. How many cars does Uber own? 0. How many stores, how many physical stores does Amazon own? Well, a few, but not that many, right? In every industry around the world, platforms are coming and are smashing pipelines. There are virtually no industry that I can think of where a pipeline business is able to compete with platforms on a sustainable basis. And the reason for that is, all it takes for a good platform to do is to figure out how do we get the protocols, how do we get the network, how do we enable the sharing of information, how do we enable people to build on what we have built and use network effects. So the more people you have, the network becomes stronger, and very tough for any one big company to come into it. So really the most radical thing that I think we have been speaking about for the last 2 to 3 years, and frankly, most places in the last 2 to 3 years where I've been seeing this sort of stuff, the reaction, at least before the pandemic, I mean, I launched Editorji in 2017, 2018, the reaction till the pandemic came from most people when I used to say exactly the same sort of a thing was to say, man's gone mad. Like, this is completely crazy, this is insane, this is just stupidity, this is never going to happen. Not in the media business. But somehow, interesting, post the pandemic, now no one is saying we are crazy anymore. Now people are saying, time lagega, maybe 2-3 years, maybe this, but they're willing to think about it, they're willing to experience it, because they have seen how in the pandemic, suddenly you can go from physical to digital overnight. How suddenly entire industries can be wiped up and new industries can come up. And all of it can happen overnight. So a radical prospect like this is not, I think, as crazy as it sounds. Now, I don't know how long it will take. It could take 2 years, it could take 4 years, it could take 7 years. But the day will come when a platform in the media business will replace the traditional way in which media is done. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing entirely. Now, how does that fundamentally work? How do you use AI and platform theory to do this? I mean, really, if you visualize the way platforms work, it's like this. You are really the person sitting in the middle, writing the code, writing the protocols, figuring out how things can come in, how is information being distilled, how is information being put into playlists and pushed out. That's your main role, the user experience for that. Content, yeah, the content can come in from Editorji, but we're very happy to take content from anybody who is a partner of ours. So we can sign up with partners and we can say, come on, put put the content in. So, Dr. Kerkar, art, why not? Let's have art content. Let's have any content coming in. So you can take content from virtually anywhere who's a partner, plug them into this and saying, fine, let's have your content. You can get influencers to add their content. You can get anybody whom you want to put it inside. And the important part about the platform, and this is really the crazy part of it, because everyone will look at you, whether it's a venture capitalist or an advertiser or a brand, will look at you and say, but how many downloads do you have? How many users do you have? And it takes us a lot to say, assume we have 0. Why is that a problem? So assume you have 0. Why is it a problem? Because as long as people are experiencing and watching it, whether they're watching it on social media, whether they're seeing it on Telegram, whether they're seeing it on the partner apps, it should not matter. Philosophically, it should not matter. And that's a place where, quite often discuss. I mean, luckily, this concept, it's not actually 0. It's actually, if you do distributed distribution, you'd be astonished at how fast it would happen. Why? Because we are plugged into things like Glance. We are plugged into things like Airtel Thanks. If you guys use Airtel, then Airtel Thanks will have our videos running on it. So that's per month, by the way. 9 billion impressions per month is the sort of people who are being exposed to that content, which is why distributed distribution essentially works. But I'll save you all of this. But the real excitement in this, and then I promise to shut up and throw it open to questions. The real excitement, I think, from my point of view and our point of view is, within a year, actually within 3 months or 4 months, the technology is ready. I'm happy to do a private demo for anybody who wants. We can enable anybody to create their own video news channel. Anybody. Now, there's certain elements of danger in that you want what everyone's going to run on having their own video news channel. How does that even work? It's not quite as wild as it is. We are starting this off with just select partners, where what we do is with Editorji, you can create your own newsletters. We do 150 video stories a day. All those stories are available, and you can assemble them into whatever you want, and you can record your opinion. So this is you can become an anchor person. You can add your own anchor links. You can add your own opinion to stories. And then you don't need to have Editorji or anybody else. You can then directly share it on your Twitter, on your email, on Instagram, embed it in your website or whatever. So this is again a very nascent idea, but this is where Web 3.0 or, Web 3.0, which is a buzzword these days, is not, it's largely a scam right now because people associate it with cryptocurrency, but there are aspects of peer-to-peer networks which are not a scam. And the ability for people to, for example, supposing you had a group, call it the Museum of Goa group, people whom you know, and they trust you to have information. What are we in the business of doing? Creating those little video stories that I mentioned. Let's say we're doing 150 of them. For us, we are in the business of creating Lego blocks. So each of those 150 is pieces of information. Now we can use AI to assemble them into a newscast for you. But why do you need us to assemble it? There are 150 stories. Let's have Dr. Kerkrat. He knows what everybody wants, right? Or people will like. You assemble those building blocks into a newscast that you think people will like in Goa. Right? Assemble it. So you say, here are pieces of information which are relevant. Each of those information is non-opinionated, so you can assemble it if you want to. Add your anchor links, add your opinion, and share it. That, I think, is the way things will start to move. Why those building blocks are important is because today, as I started by saying, all of information is fundamentally coming to you from sources that have their opinion laden on them. So it's not flat pieces of information. And there's a danger in that. What we are trying to do is saying, this is what has happened. Now, is it good or is it bad? That decision we leave to you. Or if you're sharing it or you're building the playlist, we'll allow the people who's doing that to do it. But the basic information is just flat, this is what has happened. We allow people to make up their own minds. That is one major philosophical decision that we have taken, that the news stories themselves should be flat. The other very major important philosophical thing that I want to leave everyone here with is what I started by saying, should you show people news content that they have said they would like to see, their preferences in other words? And I know Seema and I have debated this or argued this at the time when we were setting up Editorji many, many years ago. There's a particular view, and there's nothing right or wrong with any view. One is to say, if people have set certain preferences, show them the news that they have said they would like to see. So if they've said, we don't want to see politics, why are you showing them politics? If they don't want to see international, don't show them international. And there's nothing wrong with that argument. That's absolutely a correct argument to take. The line that we have taken has been slightly different, which is to say, we're in the business of informing people. So even if a person has said, I am not interested in business, if it's a really big business story, you should show it to that person, because if you're the medium by which people are being informed, you don't want them to be locked up into ideological echo chambers, because that's the danger. All of this is an exciting world. Yes, AI is going to play a powerful role in this, and platform theory will come and lots of stuff will happen. But AI, at the end of the day, is just a tool. And that tool can run amok. I'm sure all of you have seen The Social Dilemma, that serial. If you haven't seen the documentary, you should see it because it's true. Facebook, Instagram, all of these algorithms keep showing you stuff which is designed to drive clicks, which is designed by, okay, I will show this to this person and that person will click upon it, right? What that means is, if you have right-wing views, you will be shown right-wing stories. You keep on being shown right-wing stories because you're likely to click on them. You'll never be shown a left-wing story. If you're interested in X, right, you will keep on getting stories about X to such an extent that you almost forget the rest of the world exists. And that's the reason why, fundamentally, according to me, the world is becoming such a divided place. Why people are not being able to agree with each other. It's not just in India. I mean, India, of course, there are divisions, but those divisions aren't only in India. Those divisions are everywhere in the world. Look at what's happening in the US. I mean, in the US, 2 years later, you can't get two people to agree on whether there was an election and whether that election was a fair election, and somebody win the election. Who won the election? No one can agree on that, right? So the most basic of things people can't agree on. And why is it? It's not some miracle that is happening. It's happening because people on this side of the divide are being shown stories that feed their belief. People on this side of the divide are being fed stories that feed their belief. And you can't agree. Nobody can agree on what reality is. And that is going to get worse and worse and worse the more you leave things just to algorithms. So yes, we are using AI and we are using algorithms to try and reshape the landscape. But I think we're very cognizant of what the problem is. It was very easy for us to have built an algorithm right at the beginning, which would have only shown people what our data is saying they will click on. And I can tell you our traffic would have been 100 times of what it is right now. Not double, not 10 times, 100 times. We chose not to do it. Having built that algorithm, we broke it and we came up with some new hybrid system where human editorial processes will work together with what the AI is telling us we should do. And I still think that is going to be a path forward. Okay, that's it, I'm done.